Okay, so here's our video on our short essay, instructor feedback for the short essay quiz question for our client, Jessica. Now, if you didn't do this before you read I'm sorry, before you took the quiz, I would go back to the case study. If sorry, let me restate that. So, if you didn't read the write up that goes all the way down to just before the intervention plan, even if you already took the quiz and didn't read all of this yet, I would encourage you to go back and take a look at this before you watch the rest of this video. You don't have to, of course. But I think, and I know there's a lot going on this page. There's a lot of content just in a single page. I'm definitely aware of that. But I think because the case study of Jessica as our client really gives us a lot to think about and challenges us challenges us pretty well. At least to me, that's how I took it. So there's a lot to learn here, I think. Anyway, so before I go on, let me just point back to I think that my answer and my feedback about my answer for the quiz will make more sense if you take a look at the write up here. Okay, on the case study page if you didn't do so already. Okay, so coming back to our intervention plan for Jessica. So, and I think going back to the social cultural considerations directly connects, which it should. Like those different aspects of your assessment should connect to one another, right? There should be, oh, okay, this makes sense. I see the connections. Not for yourself, and then because if you have it for yourself, then other people who might benefit from reading your assessment, your full assessment, diagnostic and intervention plan for different clinical purposes or maybe even advocacy purposes, that they'll see those connections and that'll be helpful. Okay, so back to intervention planning for Jessica. So I think the most immediate thing is that she blames herself she certainly appears to, for the suicide of the woman in the community who had lost both of her sons, and she was the unfortunate person, had the unfortunate burden of telling her about the second son shortly before her suicide. So helping her work through that, there can be very much like a survivor guilt, not necessarily meaning, oh, well, that should have been me, but rather, how can I go on here when this person has suicided and I have a connection to it in a way that's really unsettling and difficult. So, so I think that's maybe first and foremost. In conjunction with that, helping her develop, she's very, very hard on herself, much like with Amy, probably a theme through all of our clients, actually, as I think about it. But Jessica is very hard on herself, and there sounds like a good bit of blame. So helping her through, look, there's grief, and then there's also trauma and grief, right? So there's a grief of the loss as community member that she didn't necessarily have a deep personal connection to, but she knew who she was and had previous interactions with her, even if they were somewhat tenuous. And then there's definitely trauma, being in her role of how this woman found out and then suicided shortly thereafter. So helping her, through that as therapy topics, probably first and foremost, helping her see if you can get her to open up to like doing some self-care, and not just like, you know, uh, exercise and eating right and sleeping well and that kind of thing, which is all very important, but also how she talks to herself and how she, just developing some self-passion or some thinking or cognitive self-care. In addition, she says some very harsh things about herself in our short time together. Um, and again, maybe a theme with most of, if not all of our clients in our series in this course. Um, I think the other thing that's not spelled out here in my written answer is that there may be within all this some lingering, what's sometimes called unresolved grief, meaning that grief is still the grief in this case, the loss of Jessica's grandmother may be uh, still there, and maybe something that continues to bother her, but maybe in a less directly impactful way until this happened. So that's worth exploring with her. And then beyond that, what does the loss of her grandmother mean? What's behind that? Because at least what I got out of the script and her, um, the actress, the actor who played this, what she says about her past, and implying that her grandmother raised her, and by proxy implying that her birth parents, were not involved with her. Um, so there may be not as much there as I think, but but probably worth exploring with her. Assuming that Jessica will allow you to, and to do that, we're going to need to, lots of compassion and empathy with Jessica, because she's, as we can tell, she's uh, very hesitant and maybe even reluctant to be here with you as the clinician social worker. Okay, so that's my feedback for our client Jessica.